Welcome back to another episode of In the Kitchen. Today we're back in the kitchen with the head chefs over at Funnel Chef. So we've got Mr. Mikey Tiber, Mr. Scott Concanon, and myself, Chris Terry. If you haven't met us already, well, over at funnelchef.io, we work with coaches, consultants, and agency owners to implement proven recipes for success into their business so that they can attract more clients and generate more revenue and profits, all while avoiding that dreaded guesswork, right? So this is taking proven systems and processes that have not only worked in our business, but they've also worked for our clients and even our competitors throughout the years. And we boiled them down to simple but specific, detail oriented recipes that you can implement into your business today. So you don't have to be a tech guru, a smooth talking salesperson, or just a genius in general to have success. Just like a good recipe, as long as you have the right ingredients and you follow the step by step process, you can also get great results. So, guys, I guess technically for anyone watching this, they don't know, but we're on take two now. My internet has just been fading in and out, just like FSU's hopes at a title. So, no, we'll see, right? We don't know what things look like tomorrow, but the main thing we were talking about is, and this is where this conversation has been coming up more often than not now, just because we just had a decent number of new clients come on and we're building out their sales process. So we've been talking a lot about different sales processes, right? And, some of these, some people may be, a little familiar with, or at least some variation of it. We do things a little bit differently because, we like to control what we can control and put, good processes in place so we can plug in salespeople and they can have success. And we like duplicating it because like it's a good recipe, right? If it works, let's cook it in this other kitchen today. But two of the sales process that we use a lot and that we like is something again that's pretty sounds familiar to most people. Is we use a setter closer model. We like to control bits of education along the way and automate certain processes of it. So it may look a little bit differently, versus what some people may be accustomed to. And then we also use recorded webinars and I'm sure some people are familiar with that, but one way, and we can talk about this more, but we'd like to be very strategic in terms of not only how the presentation is put together, but also in terms of the timing, what things are being said at different timestamps, right? So 25% through, 50%, 75. And, if you're using something like Webinar Jam or Webinar Kit, you can actually disqualify and qualify people based on those timestamps if you actually know how to track the data accordingly. And you can know, hey, if I just price dropped here and two people left, they probably left because of the sticker price, right? So we can go into more detail on these as we go. But Mikey, do you want to just kind of open up? Maybe let's just look at our variation of the like setter closer model that we've been using.
So I am not on mute. Great. So I would actually say that there's three sales processes that we, predominantly run. It is true that we focus on two, the third being a conversion event, based sales process, which generally we don't recommend to somebody until they have one of the other two in place. Frankly, conversion events most often are best for clean up, picking up the lost prospects, creating more engagement, and frankly resolving some issue that would otherwise make the person unqualified, whether it's a lack of capacity or a lack of information, a lack of ability, fully developed offer, whatever. But I kind of digress. When you're talking about a setter closer model, that's a lot of times referred to as a two-call close in some cases. I don't like that terminology, frankly, because I think it's a little bit misleading. When you're talking about a setter and a closer, that could be your setter could be a business development rep. It could be an SDR. It could be an ambassador, a coach. There's a lot of terms that you could use for it. Your closer on the other side could be your director, your head coach, your lead consultant, your whatever. It's just a more senior person in the organization. If if you've ever worked with HubSpot, right? They'll bring in the finance officer a lot of times when you're going to close, right? Because that's who's actually going to discuss terms as far as your payment ability with them. In any case, your setter, that person really should be positioned as an ambassador for the client. Okay, somebody that's there to answer questions, educate them, um, you know, help them through the process, and not for nothing is going to go to bat for them, with the closer to get them whatever terms or need it is that they have. Um, yeah, I think it's important that you understand the positioning between the two because the job of the setter is really to be the bridge between that marketing qualified lead and a sales qualified lead. Yeah, if you have been following our episodes, you know that the purpose of marketing is to get people to ask questions, right? And the purpose of sales is to get them to make a decision. Well, your setter, your SDR has a little bit of a marketing and a sales role, right? They're answering questions and they're getting them to ask more questions, and they're also getting them to make a decision. That decision being that they're ready to move forward. We just need to work out the terms, right? They're the person that's going to be supplementing your email and other automations and preparing the person to be conversation qualified. Again, another hat tip to one of our past episodes. Um, and it's only when they're conversation qualified do you really want them in front of whoever that closer person is. A lot of people think that setters should just push everyone through. That's not true. A good setter is both you know is both educating and preparing the prospect, but also qualifying them for the closer's time. When you look at time value, a good closer on OTE, on track earnings, it's going to make somewhere between 150 and $350,000 a year or more. Whereas your setters are generally going to make 60 to 80 on average. A really great one's going to make 100 to 150. So, you know, if you look at the time value of those two individuals, you want good setters are going to protect the closer's time and make sure that they're only talking to truly qualified prospects that are frankly ready to move forward. Did we mention the difference between a sales process and a sales methodology, by the way? You think that's worth people understanding,
I
Chris?
mean, I think we've discussed it before, but I think since you're bringing it up now, you should probably give him some more to chew on. Yeah.
So, a sales process is just the series of steps, to move a prospective buyer or prospect from initial contact to a closed sale or to a client. Methodology is conversely is like the framework or systems that you use to manage and execute your sales process. So, whereas the sales process is the actual roadmap that's specific to your business, it's the steps that are specific to your sale. The methodology is kind of an overarching series of values, beliefs, and yeah, ways of managing that sales process. If that makes sense. You're muted, bud? You did what I always do. Oh,
Well,
by the way, muted. I want to say one thing real quick. Go for State football. That's all I'm going to do. Just the one. Just the one.
it's okay. We can cut that out. Something worth noting here, and just because we actually had this discussion with someone last week, is that, or at least I think it was last week. It was another sales coach, sales professional, and we were, basically having a conversation with him at looking at potentially helping him find roles to place, alumni from his sales training and jobs. And there's a really big, I don't want to call it like a misunderstanding, but a lot of people, they hear about a one call close, right? That only works in certain offers, certain companies. It depends on what you're selling, right? If you're selling a $6,000 coaching program, it could be a one call close. If you're selling someone on $100,000 investment, it's probably not going to be a one call close, right? If you're talking to anyone involving term, I mean, they're going to want to see the contract, right? So it just depends on what you're selling. And that's one thing, we spoke with him. A lot of his, like he mentioned, his alumni coming out of his sales training, they're all trained on a one call close. So that's where, I don't think we mentioned it in this take, right? But, what some people qualify as high ticket, right? For them, that $6,000 coaching offer, that's a high ticket offer that they're selling.
Yeah.
Um, right. Obviously, we sold for, you know, companies. I think I've closed like a $500,000 deal before. That's
Yeah.
probably more of like a higher ticket. That also was not a one call close. It took like a month to close that deal, So it's
Have,
definitely depends on who you're speaking to and what offer is to like what the actual process looks like. Because a lot of people, if they're looking at setter closer, they expect that the lead comes in, setter qualifies them, piques their interest more, gets them ready to pass on to the next step, and then they make it to the closer, and then it can be a one call close for the closer. But it just depends on what it is, right? What it is that you're selling. You could use setter or closer, and it still not be a one call close. A lot of it depends on what you're actually selling.
so I think that a good way for kind of differentiating that, a lot of people, so the person that you're referring to, right? He considered his offer to be high ticket because it was $5,000 to $8,000. I do not consider that to be high ticket personally. I consider that to be mid ticket. Um, your 2,500 $3,000 area to $10,000 is really mid ticket. $9,000 is really mid ticket. 10,000 above is where you're getting into high ticket, right? And why is this important? Well, the number of people in the world that can afford that, afford high ticket offers is substantially less. So your number of opportunities is going to be less, and therefore your conversion ability needs to be better on high ticket. You can't give up the opportunities, right? The amount of time that your prospect has to engage with you, your brand, your product, service, etc., is substantially higher with high ticket than it is with a low ticket offer. If on average for a $10,000 offer or package, a prospect needs to spend somewhere between, I want to say it was 9 and 11 hours of time engaging with, your company, your brand, your product, your service. That doesn't mean that they need to be talking to a salesperson for 11 hours, but they need to be watching videos, they need to be reading emails, they need to be, checking out what the reviews look like online. Hopefully they look well, right? Um, so yeah, I think understanding that differentiation is pretty important. And this isn't just applied to online sales or over the phone sales. If you look at even auto sales, right? When you go to a Honda dealership, you're probably going to be with one salesperson, cradle to grave. If you go to the Mercedes Benz dealership, you're going to be with one salesperson that takes you through, shows you the car, puts you in the ride. And then what happens? They sit you down with the finance director. The finance director is the closer. That is a setter closer model, just in a fortress, right? In a single location. So, look out for these things and you'll start to pick them up, um, and be able to see
Yeah.
the difference.
Yeah, and I think you just touched on a difference there too, right? I think the way people think about most Hondas, they go to a Honda dealership, they're probably going there, they're showing up because they're about to make a purchase, right?
Yeah.
So it's more about the salesperson just helping to make sure that they don't scare them off. Really, there's maybe not as many people showing up every day, so you want to have a really good closing rate, right, for people who are there to actually buy. But when you go to like a Mercedes or anything above that, right, it's more of a luxury purchases at that point. Like someone's not going to buy a Mercedes because they're like, man, I really need to get to work every day, right? That's usually not it. For a Honda, that might be the case. But so it's a different sale. But I do think it's worth noting as well. A lot of people, when they're talking about what they're calling high ticket, and it usually is, like you mentioned, 3 to 9,000, right? But they're referring to as high tickets, maybe more of mid ticket. Um, they also do, it's a lot of financing, right? Which is, again, they're trying to make it maybe more affordable, but they'll take a $9,000 offer and say, hey, you know, cool, we can break it down to 6 months of payments, and that's okay if that's, what you want to do, right? That's your offer. If that's the way you close them, that's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. If you want to have that stack up that recurring revenue coming in. But it's definitely not the same thing that I think I would, and it sounds like the same as you, qualify as like high ticket sales versus if you're selling a $40,000 offer to someone and they're making it in one or like a split payment. Um, and again, that's not meant to, if you can do it in a one call close, that's great. But if you're selling something higher ticket, especially if it's more of like an investment, right? Um, Anyone who's smart with money, they're going to want to review the actual terms, right? Because I think anyone who's, dealt with anything dealing with contracts, if you're speaking to a salesperson, they may say one thing to close the deal that might not be, what's written in the contract. So usually those processes may take a little bit more hand holding, more follow up. And while we're on the topic, something that's worth mentioning is that a lot of coaches, and really just one person comes to mind that we worked with, um, you know, maybe a little bit of not the best guy, so we're not there anymore. But worth noting, he had what I think was a really good sales process initially. He didn't really have any marketing going, so there wasn't much volume coming through. Um, but so he essentially had to close people. It was a two call close, setter, closer call, and they would sell them on a lower ticket offer on the front end, and then try to upsell them to these higher ticket packages on the back end, which kind of hits in that area of they're having time to have conversations with the company, not just coming straight at them. Hey, it's 25K, right? I think he had a $1,500 offer, and then he would upsell them throughout the process. But everything in their system was built around that two call close, setter, closer. And the big issue that happens is what happened if that person doesn't close on one call, right? He had zero remarketing running, no email campaigns. His salespeople did zero follow up. So if someone didn't close on the call, sometimes they would just never even hear from anyone again. And at that point, I think it's like who is that on, right? Is it on the prospect to reach out to you, or is it on you to reach out, to the prospect? And it's probably the latter, right? And so that's where, you can have a good sales process in place, but not everyone's going to close immediately. And so you have to have some form of re-engagement campaigns going on the back end. Could be email, could just be basic follow-up from the salesperson. I like seeing a combination of both. Your salespeople need to be doing their own follow-up, plus you need to have just automated like email campaigns going out to people who they've already spoken with. Should be different than campaigns going out towards like new leads who haven't booked a call or no shows. But that stuff's just as important as your normal sales process, right? And those are there to support the process, because even if you can convert at 5% higher conversion rate, that's a pretty big deal if you're doing that with volume. And so I've just seen that overlooked a lot. Everyone wants that one call closed because it sounds really good. If you go online in any of the coaching Facebook groups, everyone's like, they refer to everyone as a savage, right? Hey, what's up, savages? Talking about closers, and that's all good and fun, man. And whatever gets you kind of pumped up, and you want to be good at your job and you want to be great, that's great. But a lot of what I would even say, maybe even higher paying positions, it's going to be selling those higher ticket offers, and they're not just going to be one call closes. You've actually got to work with the prospect. And it's maybe a longer sales process. I mean, I've actually had people that we've spoken with, and 6 months later they close. So I know maybe that doesn't sound as sexy to someone because it's not a one call close, but sometimes that's just part of it. And one thing, like I was mentioning, we spoke with that sales trainer. All of his people that he was training, really, they were trained to sell coaching offers. So they wanted to have that one call close. And that's what they're there for. And they were going to sell a $6,000 package, get, 20-25% commission on it. And so they're fine with that, right? And that's a great sales process. You book 5 or 6 people on your calendar, you can close 2 out of 6 each day. You make, $2,000 in a day in commission. So it's not a bad thing at all. I think it's just worth noting is that when you're talking about sales processes, the actual, from when they start speaking to you to actual close, may look different. Just because you're doing a set or close model doesn't mean it's going to be a 2-call close. Could be 2 calls, but it could also involve 6 emails and 4 text messages, right? So, um, maybe that 2-call might be a little misleading. But something I think, kind of going into the next thing is that, if we want to look at how a sales process evolves as your business grows. And I think this is really important, especially if you're a solopreneur, right? Because if you're a solopreneur, you probably started out to where you're doing all the marketing, you're doing all the sales. So you're literally you know, involved in every aspect of it. Well, anyone who's been a part of any business that's really growing, that that's not sustainable, right? If you're the face of the business, next thing you know, you've got 300 clients. No way you can be involved in the sales process the whole time throughout it as well. So at that point, that's definitely when you would want to expand, change the sales process. And, maybe it's not necessarily changing everything up, right? I'm from South Georgia, and they say it in a very thick Southern accent. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. But there's some truth to that as well. If you've got a really good sales process that works, find ways to, if you're scaling to where you can remove yourself. And that might not necessarily mean remove yourself completely, right? You can use recorded VSLs, recorded webinars. You can still be involved in the process. You can basically have quality control for what information is being transmitted to your prospects. But, there's also, you need to be thinking ahead, right? Just because it's working today, that's great. But a year down the line, you might have to make some changes. So you want to find a process that works, but you also don't want to get married to it, maybe right out the gate. If you're going 5 years strong, maybe it's time to marry it. But if not, be open to change, I guess.
So you may have already said this, and I apologize. Something happened, and the computer gods decided to restart my computer. But I think that, yeah, you can prepare. If you're thinking ahead with your sales process, you can incrementally add in things and develop over time. Like you were saying, when you're a solopreneur, when you're first starting out, you're proving your concept, your offer. You're probably not going to have another salesperson, or you shouldn't have a salesperson in the business. You should be the salesperson for your business. The guy that started Salesforce, he had 3 different cards and 3 different signature blocks when he first started Salesforce, right? One was for CEO, one was for business development rep, and one was for something else in his business, right? So they could position himself accordingly, went off the brand. Once you have the offer dialed in and you have lead flow, right? Your marketing's figured out. You have a product to market fit, and you develop the channel that has consistent opportunities. That's when you want to add in a setter, but you're not going to add in a closer right away. You want to add in a setter that's going to guard and further qualify, make sure that they're conversation ready. And then once that becomes too much for you to handle, you're working in the business too much. That's when you want to replace yourself with a closer, right? So it's incremental steps. And a lot of people make the mistake of going, oh, I need sales. I need a sales guy, when that's wrong. Frankly, you don't. You need to improve your marketing. You need a better product to market fit, or you need to figure out, one or multiple marketing channels before you even consider hiring a salesperson.
Yeah, I don't think, or at least I know I don't have like an exact equation for it, right? But you probably need to look at your daily schedule, understand how many sales calls do you have. If there's a lot of deliverables, in your lap for clients, how many clients you're working with, plus what other daily tasks are there, right? If you're running marketing, you need to be there to project manage. If you don't have someone to do that already, maybe you need to, shoot videos, VSLs, more content. If you're all of the social media, you just need to look at your daily schedule. Like, don't force it, but if you have a ton of things on your plate and then you're also taking the sales calls, you've got to look at some point there's going to be diminishing returns, right? you're too scattered. Maybe your brain's all over the place. You're jumping back and forth. Maybe you're just not doing one of those things as well as you should. But it is, once you have your marketing dialed in, if you have, once you figure it out, if you've got qualified leads coming in on a consistent basis, at that point, maybe it is time to look at, hiring a salesperson. Um, and then making sure they're actually trained, right? I think that's one thing as well, is that I know in the coaching world, at least, um, there's a lot of, and it makes sense. I think if you're selling sales coaching for one person, probably sales coaching for someone else as well. Same with any industry, right? If you're hopping industries, or not, if you're not hopping industry, but you're just changing companies in that industry, your ramp up time's not going to take as long because you're already familiar with the process and what things look like. But if you're bringing someone into an offer that's very specific in terms of, you just know that the prospect is going to have a ton of questions, there's a lot of education involved with it. You want to make sure those people are trained. So you also want to make sure that as you're growing your sales team, as the process develops, you're also building up these assets that salespeople would need, in the future. Right? Maybe it's an FAQ sheet, maybe it's just access to more content they can send and follow up. And putting those things together, it shouldn't get overlooked, because again, it's all about increasing your closing rates. And if you're stepping away from the business and you want to make sure that other people can keep performing and closing at the rate you want, you need to make sure you can give them the tools to do it.
Yeah, I think that's a good and fair point. Recording everything is frankly one of the best things that you can do as a small business owner or a new business owner, a new entrepreneur. Just take all of your calls on Zoom, take all of your, or record all of your calls into your CRM or marketing automation, and notate, have a sheet somewhere where you notate where you get new questions or you get unusual situations, so that you can use those for training opportunities later on. I know that when we go into an offer to take over on the sales front, it's one of the first things we ask for. What recorded presentations do you have? What sales calls do you have that you can provide to us? What, training materials do you already have put together? And I would say 99% of the time, they have maybe 30% of what we request. So the ramp up time's a lot longer. And frankly, to your point, as far as I think that there are going to be nuances in every business and every offer, but especially in the setter role, a setter can work. A setter for one business coach can definitely be a setter for another business coach. Like, there's no issue there. We have several clients that, share the same setters because they don't have the volume, right, to justify having it by themselves. And they just comp based on, a per call basis.
Yeah. And I think, this is, I don't think it's uncommon at all. And if you're a salesperson listening to this, you already know this, but a lot of salespeople, especially commission-only sales reps, and this is really popular with coaching offers, but a lot of sales reps are selling on more than one offer. Same as a setter as well, right? Depending on what your role is, what your calendar looks like. I know a lot of people get into the remote closing roles because they want, number one, they want to make good money, right? They know that if they're selling high ticket offers with good commission rates, they can make good cash if they're good at their job. But also, it's that autonomy in a way, that freedom of, you're not tied to, you're not putting one person in charge of your income. And I know a lot of salespeople, they'll be selling on two offers at a time. So if something ever happens with one, maybe they just really don't fit in with that culture there, they're not going to be stuck, because that is where a lot of people you speak with, not even just in sales, but in really any profession, people stay with the job that they hate, and it doesn't get better, right? It just kind of snowballs, and then eventually they just maybe quit, and they don't really have any other options, and then there's just a ton of pressure there. So, I think diversification, everyone talks about it, in your portfolio of investments, but I think for a lot of salespeople, they look at diversification in terms of what offers are selling on as well. And that's where we actually work with a lot of salespeople that, they know they can come to us to find other offers to sell on.
How many, what's the most offers you've been on at once, Chris?
Um, three, probably three.
Three?
But at that point, one of them was so low volume. Um, it was just a couple of calls a week. But yeah, and I think that's probably common for a lot of salespeople, right? If you've been in sales long enough, especially for commission only, if you want to stack your calendar a specific way, that gives it a little bit more power to you, which is again is where I think a lot of people, you know, some business owners really don't want to hear it. But if you are not paying them a salary, you really don't own their time. There's
No.
certain things that are reasonable. You can have a sales meeting with your sales team once a week. That's okay. But, if you're not paying them a salary and it's commission only, you really do not own their schedule. So, you've got to have some respect for that as well.
Yeah. Um, so many business owners miss that. They think because, if you're commission only as a salesperson, all you want to be doing is talking to prospects and generating revenue from commissions. Like,
Yeah.
and I'm with you as far as, having a weekly review or a weekly sales meeting, but even that's frankly pushing it. If you're trying to sit your whole team down for an hour, depending on the size of your team, that could be 10 to 40 man hours that you're wasting of theirs.
Yeah. If you're
Uh,
not paying them a salary, then you're
Respectful.
basically asking them for free time and time that they can't use to make money. So
That's right.
it's
That's right.
you got the positive and the negatives, right? You bring on commission only salespeople, you're maybe taking away some of the burden of what if this hire doesn't work out? What if you take a chance on someone and then 9 months down the line, 6 months, 3 months, whatever it is, turns out it was a bad hire and you just paid them a good, great salary and it doesn't work out and you still have to replace them. Commission only gets around that. I know for some salespeople in different industries, I think they're scared off of commission only positions. And I think that being said, there's also a ton of salespeople, especially older salespeople, also who you're like, man, I made most of my money commission only. That's where you get higher commission rates. If you're getting especially a lot of companies, they may cap your commissions if you're salary plus commission. So it's a low commission. They're more looking at how much of your quota, you're attaining, and then base bonus structure off of that. Um, some people are scared off of commission only. I think if you find the right place, they have great offer, good marketing, good lead flow. That's a good place to make a ton of cash. And as a salesperson, that's usually what you want. I don't know about you, Mikey, but I think most people get into sales because they like the money. There could be some other extra add-ons that they like as well, but it usually does come down to the money. Especially if it's someone changing from one industry to sales, they're usually changing to sales because they're trying to make more money.
So I think whether or not a base, makes sense is really based on a couple things. The length of the sales cycle being the main determining factor, right? If it takes 14 months to close a deal, then you can't ask that guy to be commission only,
Right.
right? If he's truly a dedicated to your organization sales rep, right? And not moonlighting other places. It's just not tenable. The other is the complexity of the offer, right? If you're selling an enterprise solution that's hyper complex and takes a lot of integration, a lot of education to close, well, then it probably makes sense to be on a base plus a bonus structure or some type of commission structure. We personally always liked having a draw against commission, which is for those that are unfamiliar, a draw is essentially a loan against future commissions. So it's something that you pay out, and then they make commission above and over that amount that you pay them. Typically, we only do a draw for the first, basically the first sales cycle length, right? After that, they should be in the role. They should have a full pipeline, and that draw should be unnecessary. But I guess it depends on who you're hiring. Scott, you've been awfully quiet today. What's going on over there? Is it you're on mute, but is it because of your football team this weekend?
Man, what a travesty. But yeah, I mean, I think they're going down to the JV league. But no, I would say when we talk about sales, there's two guys that I think have better experience at the whole sales process, team building, and all that good stuff. Way over my head. Yeah,
Well,
but
you're
I
coming
would,
in
I
the right
would
spot. We're going to start talking
right.
about the automation we can add into a sales process. And I know you've done a ton of builds for people, in terms of automation, not only for their marketing and just back end, but also for supporting the sales process.
Yeah, and I'd say that's typically where usually I would come in and help out gentlemen like yourself is like, as you guys have talked about, depending on the size and scale of your operation and how many calls you're taking and how like you're growing and moving, the automation side is going to be key to continue that progression and that movement in an upward direction without plateauing your time. Like you mentioned earlier, like if you're early in a sales team, sales cycle, you have setters. I mean, a lot of follow up. You can have the time for follow up. You can have the time for multiple calls, and you don't really lose sight of John Doe, who's been in your pipeline for 30 days or 6 months. But as lead flow progresses, as the contact lists continue to grow, having some type of automation or system in place that allows for automation to follow up with clients 6 months down the road, email conversion. And that's where you're able to not only stack the conversation piece where you can have a manual talk point with the setter closer or whoever is in that system, but you can also provide them more marketing material as time goes on, which increases the time that prospect is actually seeing your stuff, understanding your brand, and can then eliminate a lot of those linchpins and having to spend so much manual time trying to get someone going from marketing qualified to sales qualified, as Mikey likes to say. So being able to put the SMS campaigns for reminders, for content, for that, like anything of that nature is going to be paramount for long-term success and sustainability. Email follow-up sequencings, long-term lead nurture flows, like they all play an impact of being able to almost set it and forget it unless you're changing your copy up. So every newbound lead coming in is getting inundated with your brand. So it cuts down on that manual labor.
So I would add to that too. Automation for sales assist automation is huge. The messages and touch points that are going out on behalf of your rep, as if it was that representative, where typically the setter, is huge. It saves them a ton of time and it allows them to focus on those that are engaging and responding back. And it's a way to check the temperature of your prospect, over time, depending again on your sales cycle. I like to call it a lead waterfall. This is a term I got from a guy named Chris Gravagna. If he's ever watching this, hey buddy, hope you're doing well. But in commercial finance, loans, merchant cash advances, things of that nature, a lead that's generated, if 100 leads are generated today, it's going to take 8 months before all of those leads are closed. Yes, 50% of them are going to close in the next 60 or the first 60 days, but it's day 61 through day 180 that the other 50% are going to come through. So without, robust automations, you're really going to burn out your team and very quickly, and you're going to have a lot of deals fall through the cracks if you're not, staying on top of it.
Yeah, I think maybe one of the biggest things is the deals that would fall through the cracks, right? You want to, I don't even want to say you want to hope, but you want to know that your salespeople are doing follow-up work, that they're working their pipeline. They're not only talking to new leads, but you don't want to make it harder on them, right? It's just going to make it a lot easier on them if there's some support there. And again, you can do that through automation, right? Maybe it's just email campaigns. You have to write the copy and build it out, the process in your CRM, but that's something that's there and it can help out your whole sales team, and it can help you out in the future as well. Because, let's say if you do have a salesperson who comes in, maybe it's a new salesperson who comes in, there's always some turnover sometimes in sales. if it's a new person who comes in, they're working someone else's pipeline. It's going to be a lot easier for those people to call a lead and actually be able to have a conversation with them if that prospect is continually seeing like emails or marketing content from your business. They're going to know who you are. It's not a cold call at that point. Versus if you have 0 email campaigns running and someone's just calling an old lead who sat in a presentation or spoke with a salesperson 9 months ago, right? They're probably not going to remember who you are. If you're lucky, maybe they will. But if you have email campaigns going out, it's a lot higher chance of when that new salesperson calls them, they'll recognize the company's name. And again, you want the salesperson doing follow up, but why make it harder on them? Just make it easier on them. And plus, you can actually control the content going out. So you do have to write the copy for it, but you can be in more control of the messaging that goes out there as well. And if you're a business owner, when you want to make sure your marketing is dialed in and consistent, and your offer is being portrayed the way you want it to, automating processes is going to be the main way to do that. You could give someone a script and say, hey, text them this script. But if they're using your CRM, you could actually just send the text for them, right? So it's not to make it sound like a robot, but you're using, automation is a tool. When someone, came up with the chainsaw, like they said, hey, no, I just want to keep using this saw because it's slower and it's harder to use. They said, hey, I'll use this chainsaw now. It's faster. I can still control it, right? But it takes out some of the motions that you don't have to do on a daily basis, and you can automate them.
Prospecting and follow-up are the 2 areas where salespeople, fall short the most, right? So if you can supplement, the more you can remove human error from your sales process, the better, frankly. If you have a decent salesperson in your team, or, you're working with a decent outside group, one of the first things that they're going to do is say, hey, can I see all of your emails that work? And then they're going to automate that out. Hey, can I see the text message that you've used that have worked? And then they're going to automate that out. And if they don't, if you don't have that in place, a good salesperson will simply build it or add it, to your process, using past campaigns that they've done and information that they have, which is exactly what we would do. So, yeah.
Yeah, I think some people are scared off of the word automation, and it's just there to make things better. It's a tool, If you don't use it correctly, it can make things worse. If you have typos in your messages that you're automating, it's going to make you look, like you're just not smart or you don't care, right? But if you do it correctly, it's there to support things. It's not to replace everything. There's still that human touch, the conversations that need to happen, but again, if you can make things easier on yourself, why would you purposefully not do that?
So I would say once in a while, having a strategic typo in your messaging is not actually a bad thing.
Could makes it look real, right?
It makes it look, more natural and human. So a good example of this that's worked effectively in the past is for no-shows from appointments. Having hey, are we still meeting today? And have there being a typo, and then another text that comes right after that, like immediately after it, correcting the typo. So that way it dings their phone twice instead of just once when they didn't show up to their appointment. So, little things like that.
And again, you can automate that. So.
Yeah, for sure. And we do. So,
yeah. But I think that's, when people are talking about sales process, you want to be able to automate what you can, right? Make life easier on you. Your sales team is going to help your conversion rates. And again, at the end of the day, it just makes your life easier, right? Guys, thanks for joining us for another episode of In the Kitchen. Again, if this is your first time meeting us, well, over at funnelchef.io, we work with coaches, consultants, and agency owners to implement proven recipes for success into your business so that you can attract more clients, generate more revenue and profits, all while avoiding that dreaded guesswork. So this is taking proven systems and processes that have worked for, not only our business, but for our clients, even our competitors throughout the years. And we boiled them down to simple but specific, detail-oriented recipes that you can implement into your business today. So you don't have to be a tech guru, smooth talking salesperson, or just a genius in general to have success. Just like a good recipe, as long as you have the right ingredients and follow the step-by-step process, you can also get great results. So if you'd like to learn more about what we do and find out if what we do even makes sense for you, check us out online at funnelchef.io or on any social media platform.